Monday, and you're off to the classroom. Are you dressed appropriately?
Welcome to Hack Learning Uncut with your host, Mark Barnes, a man who's not afraid to say that grades lie, homework sucks, and traditional teachers should be suspended indefinitely. Now, strap yourself in, listen up, and let's hack learning.
I am not headed to the classroom right now. I am in my home office recording another episode of the Hack Learning Podcast, and I'm dressed in shorts and a t-shirt because thankfully the weather is still beautiful here in #CLE. And I did open in this uncut version with a question about you going off to teach in a classroom and your dress. Are you dressed appropriately? But a better question for this episode is, what does appropriately mean? So how are you dressing, and what do you think constitutes professional dress for a teacher? And then how are you engaging with your students? And more important than engaging in class, if you see your students outside of class, how are you engaging with them at that time? These are issues that came up in a recent Hack Learning chat on Twitter. That's #HackLearning. We chat every Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And after you hear some of this, I think you're going to want to tune in for the next Hack Learning chat if you're not there every week, because there's some really cool stuff going on. And the most recent chat, a lot of people really loved because they said, boy, there were so many varying opinions. Some people didn't love it so much because they didn't like the varying opinions. You know, I think what happens on Twitter a lot of times in chats is you get like-minded people. And I talk a lot about like-minded people when you're building your tribe. I think it's important to find like-minded people because you can brainstorm and you can create sort of your own think tank. And that's really helpful in making yourself better at whatever it is you do. Well, on Twitter, that's typically what happens. You know, at the #HackLearning chat, Sunday mornings, we get people who are our ambassadors, you know, in most cases. I mean, we get new people every week. I'm excited about that. And we reach thousands of people every month. Last month, I think we had over 11,000 tweets to #HackLearning throughout the month. So that's really exciting. And on a Sunday morning, we might get anywhere from 75 to 150 people live for a 30-minute chat. And we put out a topic, and we have a moderator. Sometimes they're authors, but oftentimes not. But anyways, the moderators say, hey, here's something I think is important. It's hacky, and we want to talk about it. Well, this last chat, and you can actually see some of the archive. Although we don't do standard show notes for the uncut version, it's me just sort of riffing, I did put on the site this archive because it stirred some things up a little bit. And you can find it over at hacklearning.org/dresscode. And I'll remind you of that later. So the chat is archived there. And what we did is we had as our moderator Principal Mark French. And you can find him on Twitter at Principal Mark French. And you can also find him in this chat at #HackLearning. So what Mark wanted to talk about was professionalism in education, a really important topic. Because, you know, I don't want to say oftentimes, but sometimes I think that teachers are not seen as professional when compared to other professions. You know, people thinking of lawyers and corporate bankers and accountants and doctors, those kinds of professionals. We look at them, I think, differently from how we look at teachers. So we talk about professionalism because we want to make sure that we're seen as professionals because it's a really important profession. And I don't think there's too many teachers out there who would say, I'm not a professional. So it was a good conversation to have. What does it mean? There were a lot of great questions about that, and a lot of great tweets about it and some resources. But when the chat got hot was when one of the questions was about how you should dress. Should we have a dress code? And boy, the opinions flew. So I asked in the beginning, are you dressed appropriately? Well, what is that? listen to what some people say. And again, you can find this archive at hacklearning.org/dresscode. But I'm curious, and I will be curious to know what you think. I'm hoping you'll leave some comments, or you'll go over to the Twitter feed and leave a comment there, or you'll go to our Facebook page, Hack Learning, where you can find this. At least at the time of this recording, you'll find it pinned to the top of our page, and you can comment there. So here are some of the comments just to move us forward. So someone says, educators should dress professionally within reason. Not to mandate heels and ties, but not t-shirt and sneakers either. Now, some people agreed, and they said, yeah, someone said, if you were going into an interview for a job to be a teacher, you would dress up. So why wouldn't we carry that sense of professionalism into the classroom? Why wouldn't we give the same respect, I think the person said, to our students? And then if you have parent-teacher conferences, someone said, you're going to dress up, right? So again, why wouldn't you do that in the classroom? So those are legitimate points, but some people then pushed back. First of all, one person said, let's define dress code. My experience is that clothing does not define professionalism. And then we got in this debate about what's professional and what isn't. And it seems a lot of people felt uncomfortable with casual. So they said, you can't wear t-shirts and jeans because that's not professional. You can wear slacks, and you can wear maybe a polo if you're a guy. You should wear either a dress or a skirt and a nice blouse if you're a woman. So I thought this was interesting. Now, what happened here is this conversation took a turn. So from the discussion about dress and what's professional and what isn't, someone said something about when you see your kids outside of class. And one person said, well, we shouldn't really engage with our students outside of class because, you might be in an environment maybe where you're not perceived as professional, and that you can't be too friendly with your kids, and that's your time. That outside of class is my time. Someone related a story about maybe being in the gym and seeing kids and saying, hey, this is my time. And there was a lot of pushback on that. Some people said, well, wait a minute. We do some of our best rapport building outside of class when we see kids in the community, especially if you live in the community. And I think there's a difference here. If you don't live in the community, you're likely not to see your kids outside of school. If you do, though, how different is that? Because especially in a small town, you're going to run into students, and they're going to see you. They're going to see you in the grocery store, and they might see you going into a beverage store and buying a bottle of wine or a case of beer, because we're adults, right? So what we can do. So what issues are brought up there? And that really, I don't think that particular example was brought up in the chat, but it's that sort of tone that was in there. The idea is that outside of school, we're very different, and maybe we don't want our kids to see us there. So there's a whole lot of this fascinating stuff in this chat. Someone messaged me privately on Twitter and said, one of the coolest chats Hack Learning's had, in my opinion, because there were so many different opinions about specifically dress code. And, and really, if we're going to solve problems, and I don't know, is this a problem even? Is dress in school a problem? So I'd be interested to hear what you say about that. But if it is, we need the differing opinions. And what someone was suggesting to me is that this is how we really solve problems. And to me, that's hacky. That's what we like to do. We like to get a lot of opinions, use our assets around us, and then come together and say, okay, this is the best path. So I love this chat, and I want you to check it out. But, in Hack Learning Uncut, not only am I not editing, but I am also, sometimes I'm ranting a little bit. And I think there's plenty of room to rant here. So for me, what I'm going to do, I'm going to offer my opinion. And I did a little bit of this in the chat, although in the Twitter chat I try to be more, I sort of try to play devil's advocate on both sides and say, what about this and what if that? But this one was tough for me because, one, I really push back against we can't engage with kids outside of class. I just don't believe in that. I think that if we're going to build rapport with students, with parents, all of our stakeholders, we can't shy away from people in public. We have to approach them, and if they approach us, we have to be friendly, and we have to, if they see us in a store, then, that's fine. We're human. I brought up the example of the wine, and that was close to me because one of my students once saw me coming out of a beverage store with a couple of bottles of wine, and she was just walking by on the street. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Barnes, you're drinking wine?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "You know what? I'm an adult." I said, "And when you're an adult, that's a choice you can make if you choose to, and be responsible about it. That's up to you, because that's what adults do." And I'll tell you, I had a great rapport with that kid, and she even brought it up again in school and, said something to the effect of, "Yeah, you are an adult, and I think it's cool that you are out there and you're not hiding from that." And I think that's really important. And then with the clothing, I've been on both sides of this as a teacher. There was a time when I dressed up. I thought I bought into that professionalism thing. You have to be a professional. You have to look like a professional, and to look like a professional, you have to be dressed up. And I used to wear suits and slacks and blazers and ties, and to the point where people would comment constantly about the dress. But I don't think that made kids better in my class. I don't think it made them higher achievers in my class. I don't think it made them more engaged in my class. In fact, I think a lot of them looked at me as sort of this stodgy guy, who couldn't let his hair down, so to speak. I don't have much hair to let down. But anyways, then I just decided over time to change. And I went back to sort of a casual dress where I wore jeans a lot. And, and I would wear, I think, nice shirts, maybe a polo shirt. But there were times when I guess maybe I wore a t-shirt, as long as I thought it was a nice t-shirt. Not an undershirt or anything like that. And, I felt like at that point I was able to sort of get dirty in the classroom. I had a very comfortable classroom environment. Beanbag chairs on the floor, and kids often sitting or laying down on the floor, reading a book or working on a project. And it was easy for me to sort of get in there and get down and get dirty. If I wanted to kneel down on the floor and hover in a group and look at what kids were doing and talk to them, or plop myself down in a beanbag chair and read while we were having some silent reading time, I felt very comfortable doing that. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to say that I can connect achievement to that, but I will say that kids looked at me differently. I think they felt like, I was one of them. It's like, hey, he's willing to get in here and get his hands dirty too, and not worry about dirtying his clothing or getting dust on it or anything like that. He can plop himself down in a chair and relax, and we think that's pretty cool. And that was the sense that I got. And I'm a big believer that if kids see you as not necessarily cool, but if cool, that's good, but as approachable and friendly and down to earth, they will be more inclined to engage with you and with their peers in class. They'll be more comfortable with you when they're in your classroom. And if they're more comfortable with you, I think they'll be better and more comfortable learners. And there was some pushback on this point too in the chat. And again, I'd be very interested to see what you want to say. If you head on over to hacklearning.org/dresscode, hacklearning.org/dresscode, you can find this podcast embedded there. And you can look at some of the comments, and then there's a link to the entire Hack Learning chat archive. And hey, if you want more of this kind of excellent engagement on Twitter, check us out at Hack Learning on Twitter, hashtag Hack Learning. Check out our chats at hashtag Hack Learning every Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're fast and furious there. It's 30 minutes, 3 questions, rapid fire, and we hack learning, and a lot of excellent stuff comes out of there. There's resources, people share links to articles, we push back against one another, but in the end, I think we always come out learning something and taking something away that we can apply back to make us better teachers.
Thanks for listening to Hack Learning Uncut, with your host, Mark Barnes, an edu hacker who says you don't need another 5-year plan. If you're crazy enough to want more, check out hacklearningpodcast.com and read a hack learning book today, will ya? The entire series is available at hacklearningbooks.com.